this company? Because every entrepreneur has that problem, that aha moment. So what prompted you to do that?
Yeah, and this is both personal and professional for me.
Okay.
So, like I said, being in family entertainment for the vast majority of 25 years, I have seen how much kids love their media. I've seen how much fear and anxiety and guilt parents feel about what their kids are engaging with. And I built products around that. So I have talked to thousands of parents over the years and really so I understand it from that professional side of things. At the same time, I'm also a mom. Right. I have a 13-year
Sure.
old. And so I have lived this myself. She has gotten into weird stuff that we've had to have hard conversations. And so it's also that piece of really experiencing it firsthand. And then, like I said, being in this place now where most kids are going to have a high risk of kids being exposed to inappropriate content.
Well, I think it's interesting to note too. A lot of these platforms that are kind of, and I'm actually going to get to learn from you. What are the biggest competitors in the market? Because I'm actually really curious on that. But those platforms, if we really think about it, were originally not created for kids. They evolved to then kind of include kids because they saw the, I guess you could say, money opportunity, the revenue opportunity. But you're going the opposite way. You're starting at the kids and be like, no, this is our focus, and that's how we're building the app. I like that because TikTok really wasn't focused on kids, but then it happened, right? It just happened. And YouTube wasn't really focused on kids, and they introduced YouTube Kids. But you're like saying, no, we are targeted towards kids to make parents feel safe. Would that be a fair assessment about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a trend that happens, and honestly, quite frankly, it's happening around AI as well. The tools are built
Hmm.
for adults. That's the vast majority of the audiences. That's where the monetization opportunities are. But you find something successful or entertaining or engaging, and kids are going to inevitably engage. They're aspirational. They want to do what their older siblings or their parents are doing. So then you see these large companies build the kidified version, but they're walled garden kind of versions, or they're built for adults and kind of have some features blocked off.
Yeah.
And it's not coming from that kid first perspective. And they have leaky walls and, sort of trouble that can happen. So it is a different mindset to build from the ground up for the kid audience and then
Right.
go from there. Can still be just as viable and successful of a platform. It is just a different approach.
So, just is this a fun question? Do you have kid testers? Do kids actually test the app out and then
Oh, of
give you,
course.
yeah,
Oh my God.
feedback?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, user testing, I don't go anywhere without user
Sure,
testing
of course.
regardless. Like that is just a core part of that's why I have a background in developmental psychology to understand
Oh
like how
wow.
to do this. It's why I originally thought I wanted to be a researcher because I love talking to kids about what they're engaging with. I also realized I want to build stuff. So
I think it's kind of the perfect timing with technology because we've almost kind of gone too far with technology, and you're seeing kind of things reel back. TikTok's getting reeled back with the government. So I think you're at a really good point with this company in terms of just the overall market. It never hurts to have a good overall market trend to go in your way.
right.
That's you know. So number two is a solution. So what solution does Between solve? What is y'all's main thing y'all solve with your company?
Yeah, Between it is a family friendly platform that if grandma looks at it, if a preschooler looks at it, nobody's going to be offended. Nobody's having a hard conversation. Where it is entertainment, it is a good, happy place. But then it's also about teaching mindful media habits for life. Because the other aspect of this, I think for a lot of us, even as adults, we're still learning the mindful media habits of how do I open an app and have an intention of how long I want to use it versus just getting stuck into doom scrolling. How do I think about advertising and what action it wants me to take? These are all things kids have to learn. We all have to learn as adults.
Yeah.
And so not only having entertainment, but also having that set them up for life so that whenever they're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever other platforms come, they've actually got the skills to be able to navigate it successfully.
So I noticed within your app, because I was just scrolling through it, and after it was quick. It was probably after six to 10, it was like, do you want to set kind of a time to limit, how much you're watching it basically? And so she 100%, she means what she preaches, like probably 10 scrolls through. It was like, what's the exact term? Do you want to limit what you're watching or what?
Yeah, it's like a mindfulness prompt, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ones that come in there. This is just on a side note, talking about like metrics of success and kind of thinking about like, walking the walk. There's something super interesting about asking people to set a limit to how long they engage, because it directly goes against some of your growth metrics.
Yeah.
I bet on shorter stints, repeat visits over days is going to be a much better outcome for our user base than just extending and trying to get the longest sessions possible. So it's it's a neat debate, neat way to think about the metrics of success.
It is interesting, and I think what it does though is it further showcases, like, if the app actually prompts you to itself to kind of limit the screen time, and it's really what it's doing is promoting healthy habits, right? And it's almost like when you show kind of the journey of the customer and you provide the most value possible, people are going to want to talk about it. Like, you're going to have parents saying, not only is this app helpful for my kid, they're not on it 24/7 either. But by having that, I feel like it's going to give you longevity, like maybe going forward,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a funny dynamic with parents where, getting between a child and their screen can be a very difficult conversation. And I know and I've certainly felt this too. I've known parents who would rather like unplug their router and be like, "Uh-oh, the internet's down," than like actually say like, "Sorry, time's up." Right. So again, where you can shift the blame to the app actually does often help to just give the parents a little bit of backup. So yeah.
I can't speak on that, guys, in the audience. I'm not a parent, so I'm going to let her. I trust that though. When I get to that point, it's going to be difficult. In terms of, I like to talk about the channel distribution for the app. And I was kind of curious. Now, this is more of a long-term play. This is something that's very broad. But is your platform always going to stay within the confines of a mobile app, or do you have maybe plans in the future to ever expand to desktop and other versions potentially?
Yeah, so we have the iOS and Android apps already. We are working through what does it look like to have a desktop version, just even in the notion of like sharing.
Sure.
It's sometimes, it's just good to have it. I think we've all probably had that experience of a video gets shared with you and you hit it on your desktop. So that's definitely, that's in the near term roadmap. Beyond that, it's really interesting to think about what does it look like on smart TVs, some of these other devices. I come from Netflix. Smart TVs are huge.
I think I saw a stat recently, and it's I want to say it was like 30% of viewers on YouTube watch it through the actual TV version.
The TVs,
it might be even higher, and I'm just like, that is insane. And so yeah, that's why the channel distribution mobile app, I think starting where you are, especially where we are, is perfect. But just going forward, just having that in mind, of course, being at Netflix, like, how much people watch TV is pretty cool. Your analysis, this is what I'm really excited about. So and you're going to know, what are your biggest competitors? And I'd like to really know what they do really good. But what do you feel like your company can improve on that they lack?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. The two major categories that I look at are the incumbents, so like YouTube, TikTok, and then the smaller, more kid-focused startup kind of space. And we can talk about, there's some other things on the periphery, but those are the two major ones. So in the incumbent space, YouTube is really, that is the dominant form platform for kids. Even by teen years, the estimates are 9 out of 10 teenagers are using it, and younger than that, they're moving toward that pretty rapidly. Tons of content, really broad, amazing range of things. The biggest challenge is incredibly high risk of seeing something inappropriate. So 75% of parents express concern over what their kids are going to see. And it's not just kids seeing something violent or nudity or something, like wildly inappropriate. It's also kids seeing things that parents aren't ready to talk about. So kids hearing mentions around puberty or death, or even just games or shows or concepts that parents just aren't ready to talk about. We can really provide an alternative that gives peace of mind, and just that like, oh, okay, my kids are okay. They're in a safe space for now. Not to mention comments, right? There's like a whole lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
TikTok, right? All of those similar kinds of risks. YouTube can be used as sort of the example for all of those. On the smaller side of things, there's platforms like Sensical from Common Sense Media. There's Zigazoo, which is another startup. This is one of those places where I'm like, the more the merrier. Like, we are all trying to give kids a safe space. Sensical from Common Sense Media is a little bit more like your PBS kids. They skew a little younger. They're conservative is too conservative of a word, but they're very safe. Zigazoo is very user generated content. They've started to move out of the 8 to 12 space into more of the teen space. But again, they're in that user generated content space. So then we're able to sit with this short form, again, that vertical style kind of video. Sure. All of us, it's like ABC, NBC, and CBS. There's plenty of room for everybody. And we're all going to offer things that are different. And together we provide options for parents.
Absolutely. I like that kind of a shared mission, but finding kind of your niche and what makes you different. I'm curious on the age range of this platform. Are you targeting a specific age range? Like you mentioned, maybe, PBS targets certain age range, other targets certain. Yep. What do you have an age range targeted in mind, especially early?
Yeah, right now, I mean, we are appropriate for 4 to 14-year-olds. And quite frankly, I hear from a fair number of adults that they just enjoy engaging with the content too. But really our sweet spot in terms of even all of our growth work right now is around 4 to 8-year-olds, 5 to 8-year-olds. And that's because they're aware of short form, they're interested, they're starting to engage on some of these platforms and they've not yet learned to lie about their age to get access to some of the other platforms that require you to be 13. So that skill set comes a little bit later in between years.
Yeah, you always learn that skill set for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, my mom finally, my sister got Instagram actually at 13, so she actually followed the guidelines. But I know probably 95% of people just kind of segue in there. Next, I really want to talk about the market potential, number 4, and with the market potential, what percent, because I saw your slide we're going to put up on screen, you have your kind of your total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and then serviceable attainable market. And what percent of that market is really YouTube Kids? Specifically, I'm guessing the serviceable addressable market. And is there we talked about it a little bit, but is there a bigger platform other than YouTube? Is that kind of the big fish? And y'all are just trying to capture, y'all's version of that. That might not have been a great structured question, but
yeah, let me. No, you're good. That was not judgment of what you're saying. Let me paint a picture here a little bit that I think will help address some of this. So there's a couple of different ways to think about the kids market. Okay. One of the most significant, kids drive about $1 trillion in buying influence, either directly or indirectly in any given year. So think about a kid actually saying, "I want that, toy." Versus a kid, influencing a decision of where family goes to eat in a rich restaurant. So first, there's just that $1 trillion space. Now, as we think about what are the different revenue models that we can play with, it's really 3 major ones. There's some other ones on the side, but the 3 major ones. One is direct advertising. Kids already see about 1,200 brands and ads a day in their normal everyday life.
That stat shocked me, by the way.
Yeah, and that's from an FTC report last year talking about stealth advertising in kids, where they see an incredible number of brands on any given day. And so they, again, going back to even just the mindfulness and the media habits, you need to learn to recognize candy's in the grocery store aisle for a reason, because you are a captured market at that point, and it's an impulse buy. So helping kids understand. So there's an aspect of being able to do advertising and or sponsorship in a responsible way that is transparent, that is helping kids learn. Now, and then there's a third piece, which is subscription. So when I look at, essentially a total addressable market kind of estimates, there's a 2030 estimate of about 21 billion for the kids' digital ad market. So that's not quite capturing that full 1 trillion, but it's a good proxy.
Sure.
That effectively there's a very large market there. Now in 2021, that market was about 2 billion in the digital ad space. Okay. So this is really, we're in a place where it's growing. And this is not just that YouTube is going to grow in its advertising. It's that new platforms are coming in because we're continuing to evolve and learn how to market and be able to reach kids. So YouTube right now is the dominant in that even that 2 billion or that predicted 20 billion. That is predominantly YouTube. There are some other ones that reach kids in various ways. There's Super Awesome is one. And so that's where I'd say we're all kind of looking at that growth of
Yeah,
that pot and what percentage of that can we capture as it grows.
absolutely. Absolutely. So in that, I was really curious, and this is kind of an interesting question. So, are the content creators on your platform? This is kind of a little segue, but are the content creators on your platform, are adults here or kids content creators? Like who's actually
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And
Okay,
so, yeah, let me back because another problem that Between is solving is actually around discovery. So, for anyone who is trying to reach family audiences, it's very noisy, it's very crowded. And if you are particularly trying to reach kids, you don't have a lot of opportunities aside from YouTube, which is very crowded and
sure.
noisy. Organic methods or paid methods is actually another opportunity that we have to solve. And that's what puts us into the B2B to C aspect of the business. So for the creators we're working with, we are really focused on essentially, I would say, adults of all skill levels. So we work with creators who have a couple hundred followers through, we work with creators who have 1 million followers. But we're working with folks who have a point of view
Mm.
and have some valuable information to provide to kids. So for some brands, it's not the right fit where their brand is like adult and they
Sure.
don't want to reach kids. For other most folks, they love that they can have a couple of different personas. Almost if you think about your LinkedIn persona
Yeah,
versus
no,
your
that
Instagram persona versus your TikTok, right? It's like,
that's
who are
100%.
you?
The picture you see on LinkedIn and the picture you see on Tinder, completely different.
Exactly. Completely different. So, we're looking for those creators who are open to multi-homing, essentially, right? Like
Yeah.
want to have multiple touch points for various brands or various audience members.
I think not being a parent, but I feel like if I was, this would be a question to be out, I would ask, but how do you actually curate the content? Let's
Yeah.
say I submit something inappropriate. How does that content filtration system work?
Yep. Yeah. And there's how it works right now and how it will eventually work. Because right now, the early stage entrepreneur in me fully embraces the do things that don't scale. So we look at absolutely everything. I have a lovely, amazing curation team that they look at everything. They spend more time than you would ever probably want to spend watching vertical video, but they're looking out to make our editorial guidelines and it's appropriate and safe for kids. As we grow, we're continuing to test how do we use AI to help scale the moderation. A lot of platforms have a takedown if something goes sideways
Hmm.
policy. We will review everything first because the risk tolerance is zero, right? If
Right.
an adult sees something untoward, it's like, ooh, that's not great. I'm sorry. If a kid sees something off, right, there you just can't
It's
get that trust back.
You're going for that better safe than sorry kind of approach.
Yeah. So we would rather delay, take a little longer, have to, effectively invest more in our moderation.
Hmm.
But part of our goal is that we can scale that. We can actually, that has been a barrier to entry for a lot of businesses, but we have a methodology for being able to do it that scales.
That's awesome. Yeah. So really just right now you just have a team, so it's all manual. That's manual review right now. Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's awesome. So let me ask you, in terms of going forward, raising money, these are kind of the latter half of kind of this, but who is your ideal customer? Because there's a lot of factors in play here. Are you targeting the parent or the child in terms of marketing? Or are you targeting content creators themselves and hoping they bring their audiences over?
And this is where you get into, the good old virtuous cycle of growth, right? Because the answer is all three. And really, at any given day, we're tuning all of
Sure.
them. So, but I fundamentally come down to content is what ultimately drives the growth cycle. It's probably not a shock given my background that I tend to be a content forward person. But when you've got the content, the kids come. When the kids come, you get more content, right? As long as the parents are happy, you get this lovely cycle going. So, our resources for parents are to make sure that they understand how we think about trust and safety. And we also do a lot of work to help them just understand how to parent better with technology. We're in an era where there's a lot of anxiety around technology and kids. It's also, you can't just walk away from it. You can't take those screens away. Most people, that's not a practical strategy. The reality is they need some screens in their life. So how we help parents think about leveraging screens better for, to help foster that mindfulness. That's our primary goal with them. Once the kids are in, the content is really like the thing that's going to keep them coming back and get them talking about it.
Sure.
So that brings it back to the content side of things.
That's awesome, because in doing that, like you said, it is kind of this, it's not like we target this and it's immediately going to generate sales. You really have to think about it in terms of, like I said, a 3-leg approach. And it's almost like you said, fine tuning. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to target $20 to $40 CPMs. And I'm curious, from the content creator side, do you have a percentage in mind you plan to take from creators? Because I know YouTube is about 60-40-ish. Do you have that number in mind, or is it just like get a bunch of users and then we'll talk about that later? I know it's.
Yeah, it's so, and it continues to evolve. So I'll tell you kind of the way we're looking at it. So there's advertising, there's sponsorship, and then there's subscription. Optional subscription is another option that we continue to play with. When we get into the model for how we help support creators, we're generally looking at about a 20% fee, which is pretty standard to like a management fee, is what it would be akin to. We'll continue to like play with that, tune that, see what makes sense. The fundamental is like, the more we can pass through to creators, ultimately, the better we're going to be doing as a business as well, because we really want to support those folks and their voices. We just have to find what the experimentation will help us settle on.
That's awesome. And what, besides, obviously the ad revenue from advertisers, you mentioned sponsorships, all that. Well, because I know what TikTok has done is they've incorporated, kind of a store into it where you can buy merchandise, and that's another way to support creators. Super chats, for YouTube, where you can donate. What do you feel as the beginning? Is your main revenue stream going to be advertisers? And then where are those other streams where, as content creator, can actually make money? Because again, go back to the content creator. If they can generate money, they're going to really invest in that platform.
Right. Yep. So we're already starting to test really what the sponsorship for creators model is going to look like. Advertising takes a long time to scale because you need the user base for it. So what I can charge at a CPM right now, sure, even if it was a premium CPM, just given the user base, is not going to be that interesting. Same on the subscription side. All right, it gets interesting when you're at scale. The sponsorship model, because we have a number of different touch points, we're not just our platform, but also we can help creators across their various platforms. It's almost starting to move into like an influencer marketing kind of coordination piece. That's where we can have some pretty real impact for our creators, and we're starting to experiment with that. So we just last week launched our new iteration of our creator program, which is effectively our version. TikTok, YouTube, everybody's got their version of it. Sure. For the most part, those focus on how many views can you drive and how much engagement. And then you're rewarded financially for driving that engagement. That leads to all sorts of behavioral tricks. It leads to just poor quality content ultimately, because everyone's like slapping their camera trying to get your attention. And so we really want to foster.
Our click-through rate, by the way, when you did that, just increased.
That's the starting clip for this, and help financially support our creators is really, that's ultimately the goal we're going for, and we're already starting to experiment in that space.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious then, how do you feel like how are creators going to stand out without that engagement or views? Because it's a two-way street. You obviously want your platform to grow. So what creators are going to be able to stand out then on your platform? Is it going to just be the quality content, and how would that work eventually?
Yeah. So one of the ways we're thinking about it is say a cat litter company wants to advertise with us. And we do a sponsored call for content about cats, not just cat litter, because that would probably get a little gross. But like we do, and then that content can have badges on it that it is sponsored by this cat litter company, right? And that allows us to pass through that funding to those creators for creating that content. And it's more in support of like, hey, going forward, we want you to keep going and keep making good content, rather than it being this like, make the content, get rewarded only if you hit these metrics. It's almost us moving back toward more of like a traditional content model of what you would see at Netflix, Hulu, Disney, where you're acquiring content and you're asking that content to be at a bar and be financially supported before it gets launched on the platform.
I got you. Interesting. And so I'm curious on the platform itself. I didn't create an account because I wasn't a
Yeah.
parent, so I didn't create an account. But
Yeah.
I saw you're not even really allowed to click on profiles until you create an account, and that's interesting. So is there a page where you can have is it a creator page, a profile page? Because again, I didn't get that far into the app. And
Yep.
is it a follow? Is it subscribe? What's the word?
Yes. So some of this is we're still actually building out some of
Building.
those
Okay.
features. So they're not even there. Like we're literally introduced the follow. The part of what you're experiencing is just early stage product developing. And then to the other point, though, of what's essentially behind a sign up wall versus not, this is a line that's really hard to walk in the kid space, because as soon as you need a profile set up, you're getting the parent involved, there's parent verification, your conversion rates are going to go down.
Mhm.
So we're trying to find that line between what features can be pre-sign up, essentially,
Yeah.
and which ones really, and it's a risk thing. So as soon as you start hitting personalized information, we've got to put it behind that wall.
Right.
And so that's going to be the line we're constantly walking.
What I'd like to know is, could you kind of go through some early success you've seen with the app? And we're going to put the slides on screen. She has relayed that very effectively. But what my question is, what has your feedback been from creators, from parents, from kids? I'd love to learn that as well.
Yeah, totally. So it's interesting because we're up over 100,000 videos streamed at this point. With
Another applause button, guys. Another one. That's seriously, that is really impressive. That's awesome.
It's so cool to watch. And it's again, I'm like of two minds, because we've had sessions where kids watch 500 videos. It's just like, and so I'm sitting here going like, oh my God, like that's a huge session. At the same time, that's 500 moments that they didn't see something inappropriate.
True.
Right. And so there's this really interesting line that we're constantly navigating. But a relatively small user base has watched a lot of videos already, which again is evidence of like there's something here. The fact that we have a really simple app, it's not even personalized, right? That is a time sorted feed. It is, it's effectively what we curate it to be. It's the same as like turning on the television and just watching whatever next episode of Law and Order shows up, right? So to already see that many views, to see actually we're up over 9.5 minutes average session length, to see the kind of growth that we're seeing even on a small absolute number, it's really signaling there's something here.
And I think too, kind of what you mentioned is kids are simple though. Keeping the app always simple is probably a good strategy anyway, because your audience is simple people. They're simple creatures.
Well, and there's just, and I don't know how many products I've built, even, you look at Netflix, a lot of these, like simplicity ultimately is just such a great thing, right? Like we often get ourselves in trouble when there's too many bells and whistles on it. Sure. So, and you asked about the feedback. So the kids love it. The kids are like, I want more videos. Right. So, that's great. We hear a lot of like, we'll ask like, is this for someone your age? Mm-hmm. And this is a great research question. Is it for you? Is it for someone younger than you? Because a lot of times when you're dealing with kids, if you ask them like, who is this for? At age like 6, 7, 8, that concept is hard to answer. But if you say, is this for you? Is this for someone younger than you? You can get a really good read on that. And the vast majority say it's for them, which is a great signal.
Question to you is, I saw you actually planned on partnering with parents, churches, and kind of school groups as an outline. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you were in a pilot stage. So how are you partnering with that? When I think partnering with churches, I think one of the best examples is to Dave Ramsey. He did that amazingly, partnered with churches, got his education into it, and then that's how he grew his business. Do you have a similar strategy with that? How do you plan on getting in there?
Yeah, so the best piece that we have so far that we're doing is a workshop called When Tech Goes Sideways, Strategies for Managing Digital Dilemmas. And this is a longtime friend of mine from grad school who's a renowned mental health expert and parenting expert. She and I have put together this workshop that does two things. One is helps parents understand how to set a good foundation with technology. And part two of it is what to do when things inevitably go sideways. And that's where Dr. Marcy's work really kicks in to be able to give a framework. Your child has been reading erotica what do you do, right? You don't just storm in there and be like, what is this, right? You like take a moment, you assess the situation, you think about what mental health needs might be needed, right? Kind of things. You figure out the like safety measures to that going forward, right? So this workshop we are offering, we have another one actually we're doing on Friday that we've been reaching out to a lot of folks and offering, and they're free workshops. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is we can offer these not only just broadly, but we can offer them to organizations to do smaller, more intimate ones, or like we can offer it to a very large corporation and it can go out to their employee resource groups that are, you know, anything parenting and caregiver focused. Yeah. Doing that, we're providing that support of like, regardless of whether you use between, these are skills that parents need. And then we also get to offer along the way of like, hey, if you're interested, here is a resource that your family can use.
I got you. So you're providing them essentially with that free value, that free education to kind of do that. But at the end, you're kind of like, well, here's a resource that we recommend to use. And that kind of falls in line with maybe this kind of, that being fair? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
That's smart. Yeah. So are you seeing any success with that? Like, have you started to implement that, or are we just the beginning of it?
Yeah, we've done a couple of rounds of it. Like I said, this Friday is our next one where we're starting to be a lot louder about it. We needed to get the bones of the workshop operating. And now we're starting to reach out to HR groups to actually just be like, hey, like, how do you think about this? Is this something we can try? We're talking with groups that supply HR groups with the programming. We're talking to, it's summer camp season. Everyone's got, it's like, hey, like push this out to your list of parents and we're happy to join. So ask me again in a couple weeks.
You have so many organizations too. I think on the church level, you got the Southern Baptist Convention. Cause again, I'm from the South, large organization. Yeah. So that is a huge organization. And, providing value and just saying, we're trying to have like a greater purpose other than making money, especially in the church sector, I think is phenomenal. Again, go back to Dave Ramsey. I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, which is budgeting and all that. But, I think that's a very effective strategy and also partnerships might not have to cost you a lot of money either. A lot of times it can be like, we'll share in the revenue with you as we grow, or if they really believe in your mission, they might even just help you out. You know what I mean? So it's a great way to get your product out there without, from the business side of things, actually spending all this money advertising or giving it to creators and all this. It's actually a really affordable way to do it,
Yep. Well, and a lot of times these are organizations that overlap with our audience too. So we can do like in-kind kind of swap or their platform, or they actually create content. A lot of folks we've gotten in touch with, it's like they're creating content too for various platforms, and we're like, great, we can like help you grow another place.
Yeah. And let me ask you again, go back to that for organizations and creators. Is there a point kind of in the future where it could become a full-time job, as a full-time thing? I know that's obviously big to dump all your resources into the platform. Are you seeing creators go full-time in this yet? Or are y'all at the point where we're still very early, it's going to be down the road to get to that point?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely people we work with where this is predominantly what they do. Between is not their only platform, though. They are multi-homing to lots of different places. We've started to have some conversations of what it would look like for content to launch exclusively on Between and have that initial window. I think that's the precursor of being able to start to really like support people at that kind of scale and viewership. But I will be super happy when we hit that point of being able to support that kind of dream for our creators.
That is super. That's so exciting. Like you're such a really cool point in the business. I'm happy to be interviewing her. Honestly, she's gonna be famous, and we're gonna be like, was this your first podcast? You've been on several others.
I've done other podcasts. I've not done much about Between specifically. Done some interviews, and obviously did the TechCrunch Startup Battlefield and things. So it varies.
I want to be the first. That's okay. Remember me when you're famous. That's all I'm gonna say. What do you see? Let's say by the end of this year, the end of 2024, and what do we see kind of going forward? 2025, 2026. What are kind of key milestones?
Yep. I think whether it's an end of 24 milestone, but the next major milestone that we are looking for is that 10,000 users and about 10 to 20 paying sponsors, and like meaningful paying sponsors. Because somebody could pay me $1 tomorrow. I'll be like, yay!
I'll give you $1. I'll be a sponsor.
Exactly. That is where you would like to be the first. You can be our first.
Let's go, guys.
You'll get the little like frame dollar on the wall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but that 10,000 user mark is really our next major milestone. And because that feeds into everything. That is how our content strategy is landing. That is how our just like parent outreach strategy is landing. All of those things, that's that growth loop coming into focus, gets us to that 10K. We're looking to do that over the next 6 to 12 months. A lot of that's going to depend on how the fundraise goes, right? Because there's the bootstrapping model, which we go slower and steadier. And then there's the with funds, we can accelerate certain things. And from there, it really just becomes like, pick your X% multiplier on each of those. But, we're looking to get to a place where we can run the business, at least break even, if not with, some, even to say profitability is because I'm going to say it right back into this, but, get to break even within that 2 to 3 years is just really responsible and critical given this economy and given this kind of business. So that's the other thing that's really important to me, is to be working toward that. I love those. There's a few companies like that. When I think about like who I want to be when I grow up, right? That is, I love those businesses that are able to find that like large impact as a business and that large footprint as a business, but have a relatively tight and small employee group.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's going to be great too, when you really start scaling with that money to hire really good talent, with that strategy. And I think this is good too, just to kind of get people to get to know you. And that's why I'm really excited. I think the audience is as well, just to get to learn about you. And because at the end of the day, I mean, it's you're the CEO of the company, you're the founder, and you really drive it forward. And just to see your passion, to see like you care about your employees, is going to be great for going forward. Looking to raise $500,000. What percent of money do you plan on kind of going into the actual product? What percent of that money will actually go into the distribution? Because how I look at it typically is, when you're pre-seeding, you're not making any money. A lot of it really needs to go into the marketing of the product, really getting it out there, getting it in the hands of customers. But what's that balance for you?
Yeah, so I look at it roughly as like a third into the product development, a third into the content support. So think about like how we're starting to really acquire and work with those creators, and then about a third into marketing. But the key in our case with marketing is, historically marketing has meant a lot of user acquisition and a lot of digital user acquisition on Google, Facebook, Meta, kinds of platforms. That's not a viable model for a couple of different reasons. One is the bottom of that fell out 2 years ago. And that it's been a very tricky time of how do you grow when you can't reliably just buy your user base. You want to get good leads. But also in our case, kids aren't on the vast majority of those platforms. So trying to, or it's a very noisy space. So we have to think about, what does marketing look like absent of the sort of traditional just buy ads on the various kinds of platforms. So that's what brings us back to, how do we think about the resources we create for parents, how we partner with organizations. And so that marketing fund is more in that like almost a partnership kind of model of things.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting. It's something, it's not unique to us, but it's definitely still uncommon and not as well sort of trod of a roadmap.
Yeah, it's agreed. There is a lot of businesses where you can pay to play. You again, you dump a lot of money into it. Your customer acquisition cost, and that's just how you do it. And maybe you break even, and then the next year, lifetime customer value, you'll start making money.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. One of the other places where this shows up that I suspect you'll be excited about. So we're going to be launching a crowdfunding campaign through WeFunder in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I've been learning tons about crowdfunding campaigns, and I absolutely love this because it has made it possible for $100 for someone to be able to invest in a business for equity. And I love this because, and it's actually why we're holding back on launching our subscription option, because I would far rather, if somebody is going to put money toward the business, I would rather they own part of Between and that we get to like almost this like parent co-op kind of model where our users get to be part of how we grow. So it carries through. I share that because I'm very excited. I'm also like just never run a crowdfunding campaign before, so this is going to be a whole other adventure in and of itself too. But I love that piece of you no longer have to qualify as an angel investor with the like $200,000 a year or $1 million in assets outside of your house or whatever the bar is of lately. Right. Like anybody can do this. And I love that.
How does that crowdfunding work? So do parents, let's say they give $100 and then as the company grows, they just get is it like kind of like a small portion of the company, I guess, like a tiny piece?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're effectively, we're raising on a safe. Okay. And so the WeFunder portion of it effectively acts as a roll-up vehicle. Or special purpose vehicle where we'll have a bunch of people within that.
I see.
And so they're getting, the like $100 of the valuation of that safe. We have a lead investor who acts as the voice for that whole portion. So we don't have, 1,000 people on our cap table either.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool, it's just, I'm like so excited because it's definitely, I think it's a game changer in a lot of ways.
And honestly, the most passionate people in the world are parents, concerned parents. I mean, that is just, and again, I'm not a concerned parent, but just seeing it like your kid is the most important thing to you in the world. And so I think if anybody's gonna see success in it, it's someone that's driven towards parents with an effective marketing plan. I'm sure y'all are doing well making videos and stuff like that.
Well, and everybody's got kids in their lives, or even like your experience that you're sharing with me, right? Your experience as a YouTuber and streamer, you've been around, like, what it can look like. And so what you've had to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can extrapolate that to what, you would hope kids around you, whether they're related to you or not, are going to learn as well. So it's a very relatable concept, regardless of whether you're a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think I want to compliment you on the last slide. The last slide, we talk about the founder team and background. That for investors and all that is a great slide because it shows your background experience. It shows, your compliment. There's no questions there. That is just a compliment.
I love it.
So what we do in the end is we typically go through, the ideal investor profile. But now that you've introduced the crowdfunding, we don't even have to talk about that. So if I not said that, you want to tell everybody out there, the audience.
Ooh, interesting. I think this is the piece that I think about a lot. And we've touched on it a little bit of like this notion of like collective anxiety. And it's on my mind too, because like we're headed into summer. So there's a lot of these like screen-free summer kind of activity posts. And they're frustrating to me because I think, especially the more you talk to parents, the more you realize what those kinds of messages do is it creates more shame for parents, because the reality is, kids watch about 5 hours of screen time a day on average. And lower income populations actually over-index to 7 hours or more a day. And that's often, it's a very personal choice for families. It's something, it might be a single mom. It might be both parents are working. It might mean there's a lot of kids in the house. It's like, who knows what the situation is? But there's, we're in this era where like, there's the message of like, no screens is better, phone-free childhood, right? Like all these kinds of things. But then there's the reality that we're in. And that reality is like, folks need this. Screens are a part of our life. And there's amazing, incredible things that come out of it, of people finding the connection to their communities and finding creative outlets and learning new things. And to just blanket shut it down would be like saying like, let's have a transportation free summer, right? Yeah. Like you just can't, because you gotta like walk to the corner stores, right? Like and so
what you're saying, it's a tool everybody has to use. So just use it the correct way and use it in moderation.
Yeah. It's a tool and you need to learn how to use that tool. And so it's something that's very much on my mind. And I think it's very underlying everything that we are doing is we're providing another tool and the education around it of how to use it smartly.
Well, that is awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions for you, Carla. I just want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you on. And real quickly, plug all your resources, plug how they can reach you, the best way to support you, all your plugs.
All the things.
Yeah.
Yep. So, fundamentally, the easiest way to get to the app, any of the things, is to go to our website. So, between.com. So, BTWND. So, none of the E's, but
We'll link it down
BTWND.com.
below. We'll link it in the description.
Okay.
We'll be, yeah.
Talk about marketing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that has links to our apps. It has links to the resources. I'm always happy to chat with folks if they want to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It is, this is something where I want to help people grow. If there are things that I can do, I just always am happy to be part of conversations. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we link all that below. Thank you so much for your time, Carla. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Of course.